If Republicans were so proud of this one big ugly bill, why did debate begin at 3:28 a.m. in the morning? Republicans are once again, which has been the case, Mr. Speaker, through every step of this journey, tried to jam this bill through the House of Representatives under cover of darkness. But I'm here today to make it clear that I'm going to take my time and ensure that the American people fully understand how damaging this bill will be to their quality of life. And as a result of the lack of health care that will result directly from this one big ugly bill, people in America will die. Unnecessary deaths. That is outrageous. It's disgusting. That is not what we should be doing here in the United States House of Representatives.
House Republicans are having to wait to deliver President Trump the biggest legislative victory of his second term. The Democratic leader Hakeem Jeffries is holding up the vote by speaking for more than 5 hours already and counting. And there's no time limit in this delay, the tactic known as the magic minute rule. Jeffries is railing against the Medicaid cuts that could leave almost 12 million people here in the United States uninsured under this bill.
And as a result of the lack of health care that will result directly from this one big ugly bill, people in America will die. Unnecessary deaths. That is outrageous. It's disgusting. That is not what we should be doing here in the United States House of Representatives.
We're covering all the angles this hour. CNN's Kevin Liptak is over at the White House. But let's begin with our congressional correspondent, Lauren Fox. She's up on Capitol Hill. So, Lauren, where do things stand right now?
Yeah, like you noted, Wolf, Leader Jeffries has now been on the floor for more than 5 hours. The record for this so-called magic minute, which can go on as long as the leader wants it to, is about 8.5 hours. That is held by Kevin McCarthy, a former Speaker of the House. So does Jeffries try to break that record in this process? I think that remains to be seen. Right now, the mood on the floor is members are sort of milling about. They're a little bit in and out. On the Republican side, there were about a dozen members. On the Democratic side, there are a couple dozen members. It's not a totally full chamber, but obviously, as the hours go on and on, it's filling up a little more, in part because members are finally back awake after staying up late into the morning to pass this key procedural vote that Speaker Johnson was able to muscle through the House floor in the early hours of the a.m. Now all that awaits is for Jeffries to finish his magic minute, for Speaker Johnson to speak briefly. We are told it will not be nearly as long as this, and then the House will vote on final passage of Donald Trump's key agenda bill. But I think Jeffries is giving a very clear indication of how Democrats want to message this on the campaign trail. He is talking a lot about the cuts to Medicaid, what they mean for Americans across the country, what he is hearing from constituents across the country. And obviously that is something that Democrats feel like they can harness in the midterm elections coming up. And just to remind everyone, the one vote against moving forward with this procedural vote in the middle of the night was Representative Brian Fitzpatrick. He is one of those Republicans who represents more of a swing district in Pennsylvania, and he voted against this. He has been outspoken previously about the fact he had concerns about those Medicaid cuts. He has not responded to questions about why he decided to vote no in the middle of the night. Wolf.
Very busy reporter up on Capitol Hill. Lauren Fox, thank you very, very much. We'll stay in very close touch with you, Pamela.
Yeah, a lot going on in Capitol Hill today. Let's go to CNN senior White House reporter Kevin Liptak, because there's a lot going on at the White House as well. And you have new reporting, Kevin, on what the president did to flip the holdouts. What have you learned?
Yeah, and remember yesterday we saw that parade of lawmakers coming through the West Wing to talk to the president, representing both sides of this divide. You saw some of the centrist Republicans who were concerned about some of the cuts this bill makes to Medicaid. You also saw some of the fiscal hawks who were concerned about the effects on the deficit. And this morning we're hearing from one former holdout, Ralph Norman, who described some of the conversations that those fiscal hawks had with President Trump. And essentially Trump made this commitment to them that he would use sort of the limits of his executive authority to try and enforce some of the provisions in this bill when it comes to clean energy subsidies. Essentially, that the president would really adhere to the letter of the law in enforcing some of the rules and regulations that allow those subsidies to phase out over time. That, at the end of the day, was enough to convince some of those holdouts, including Ralph Norman, to get on board with this bill. You know, we heard from members yesterday that these sessions in the Oval Office that the president was holding were essentially using honey rather than vinegar. The president taking photos with some of these members, handing out White House swag. That eventually does seem like it was enough to convince these members to get on board.
And breaking this morning also, Kevin, President Trump says he'll be speaking to Russian President Vladimir Putin. What do you know?
Yeah, and he says that that call is happening right now, 10 a.m. Eastern time. You know, these two men last spoke in the middle of June. Obviously, it's coming on quite a consequential week for the U.S. role in Ukraine. The White House and the administration announcing that it would pause some of these weapons shipments to Ukraine, citing dwindling supplies in the United States. And so this will be a topic of conversation between the Russian and the American presidents. You know, just last week, President Trump was at the NATO summit in the Netherlands. He actually seemed open to sending Ukraine new Patriot missile batteries and pinned the blame on this prolonged conflict directly on Putin, saying that he thinks Putin is misguided. He says that he thinks Putin would like to settle this conflict. But obviously, after a week of some successes for the president, whether it's on this bill, whether it's in the Supreme Court, whether it's in the Middle East, the war in Ukraine remains an outstanding complication for him that he still very much wants to get a settlement on.
All right, Kevin Liptak, thank you so much. Wolf?
So who's going to be better off under President Trump's so-called mega bill? For that, let's go to live right now to CNN senior reporter Matt Egan, who's in New York. Matt, what are you learning?
Well, Wolf, the president has argued that this will be one of the most successful pieces of legislation in American history. But like many things, the ultimate beauty in this bill is very much in the eye of the beholder. But let me run you through some of the groups that should come out ahead. First, big business, right? Corporate America, business groups are cheering the fact that the Senate pass this bill and the House looks like it will too, because they're betting they're going to benefit from some of the permanent business tax breaks here. Manufacturers are also pleased because this legislation will allow them to fully and immediately deduct the cost of building new manufacturing facilities. Now, small businesses, we're talking about partnerships that include doctors and lawyers and investors. They should come out ahead as well because there's permanent deductions for certain so-called pass-through entities. We look at some of the workers who could be better off here. One thing that stands out is tipped workers, right? Because they're going to be able to deduct up to $25,000 in tipped income through 2028. Also, overtime workers will be able to deduct up to $12,500 of their extra time pay. Also, higher income Americans certainly coming out better here. The Penn Wharton budget model, they're estimating that the top 20% of earners should gain $13,000 in yearly after tax income. And look at this, the top 0.1% coming out way ahead, benefiting their net income should go up by almost $300,000. Again, that's per year, and according to the Penn budget model. Another impact here for high-income Americans is that those who are living in high-tax states, making up to $500,000 a year, they will see temporarily their deduction limit increase, going up to $40,000 per year on state and local taxes for 5 years. So, Wolf, clearly some of the big winners here are higher-income Americans and some of the big business groups.